Hello, everybody. Welcome back to our panel with the professional sports teams and their foundations. We have a great group assembled here today. We have Sara Guderyahn from the Chicago Blackhawks, Kristin Rortvedt from the Minnesota Twins, Jesse Marks from the Miami Dolphins, and Justin Prettyman from the San Francisco 49ers. So a great group here, different sports, very different directions and different communities. So let's start with Sara here in terms of the Blackhawks. One of the original 6 franchises, strong organization for many, many years, really strong impact around the Chicago community. So why don't you give us a little bit of an overview of the work you're doing and some of the initiatives you're involved with now?
Sure. Thanks, Roy, and welcome everyone that's joined. So Roy said we're an original 16, but I've only been with the Blackhawks for a year, so I'm fairly new and excited to join the team. Prior to that, I spent most of my career in Washington, D.C. and in the nonprofit sector, so it's been quite a transition for me. But it's with that background that as I transitioned to the Blackhawks Foundation and overseeing our overall community strategy, we really had a big pivot in the last year around that strategy, largely informed by conversations that I had with Danny Wirtz a year and a half ago as I was looking at this opportunity. And it really connected me back to the work that I did in Washington, D.C. and some of the things that he was thinking about in terms of how we would really leverage our platform and our resources for the community. And that was in my work in Washington, D.C., I had an opportunity to work with a lot of community organizations. One of them was an incredible organization called DC Central Kitchen. And the leader there, Robert Egger, said at the time, something that's really stuck with me. And I brought that into the conversation with Danny and then ultimately into our new strategic direction for the Blackhawks. He said something really powerful around philanthropy. He said that traditional philanthropy is about the redemption of the giver, not the liberation of the receiver. And that really stuck with me in terms of how do we disrupt that from a philanthropic standpoint. So fast forward 15 years later, when I actually had the opportunity to join the world of philanthropy and to support the Blackhawks in their mission to build a healthier, smarter, and more secure community, and really looked at what we were doing and how we might shift some of our strategy to really keep in mind what the purpose of our work would be in the community. And one of the first things that we did last year was to really look as a sports team with our incredible reach and resources, how could we actually work towards making the communities around the United Center the center of our work rather than ourselves. And so we wanted to start in our own backyard, focusing specifically on the West Side. If you know Chicago, we are our home, even when we were at the Chicago Stadium, now at the United Center is on the West Side. And those communities around the United Center have incredible assets, but oftentimes the focus is on the lack of resources and the real challenges that those community faces. So really to start off, we wanted to identify and support and fuel the visions of the leaders that are from the West Side who know their communities best. And that became really our entire strategy as we moved into this year around community support, is looking at the West Side, identifying leaders, and that became one of our signature programs, One West Side. So as important as who those leaders are and the work that they're doing to transform their communities block by block is also our approach in partnership, which is really looking at the definition of partnership from the standpoint of how do we really authentically connect to these organizations, be the vehicle for them to fuel their own visions for change, and support that in really transformative, needle-moving ways for these communities. From birth to adulthood, these organizations are focused in these communities, and it's really exciting just as we're kicking this work off this year to see where it might go. But that's really at the center point of our community work and our strategy, is looking at how do we disrupt this model of going from the work being about ourselves to actually being about the communities that we serve.
Thank you, Sara. Jesse, I know you have some particular views with the Dolphins. You've done a lot of great work in your career raising money at the University of Miami. but you were brought over to the Dolphins and really developed a new approach to how you wanted to handle things. I think along the same line as what Sara was talking about in terms of connecting with the community. So why don't you give us a little bit of that background from your end, and then what that transition looked like to the Dolphins for you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Roy, and good afternoon, everyone. I spent 15 years of my career in a leadership position as Chief Development Officer at University of Miami Athletics. It's, traditional fundraising, major gift work, building buildings, capital campaigns. I got the call to go over to the Miami Dolphins. Our CEO, Tom Garfinkel, had a vision that it shouldn't always be ownership and the team, going out in the community and putting dollars to work. And his vision was basically, we'll do that, but I would love for the community and the fans to join us in our efforts. And I remember when I got the initial call, they asked me if I thought that was possible. And I said, not only do I think that's possible, is I want to crack at this. I think this is great to have a professional sports brand that really embraces fundraising to the extent that it can, and leveraging that brand. So I came into the Miami Dolphins. I wasn't really surprised with anything. I knew it was a heavy transactional model, selling tickets to an events, partners selling hospitality, not selling the cause, and really just heavy ownership and team support of all the community initiatives. The team knew what they were supporting and were very calculated, but our supporters or the people that were giving us money had no clue. So we have two nonprofits underneath our corporate umbrella. We have the Miami Dolphins Foundation, which is your traditional team foundation. And then we have this behemoth called the Dolphins Challenge Cancer. Roy came in and witnessed the scaled down version of the event this year, which was still very successful. And it's the largest fundraiser in a professional sports from a team. And it's a 4,000 participant tri-county bike ride, the raising money for cancer research. So we took that approach. They were both, the DCC had a stronger philanthropic foundation than the Miami Dolphins Foundation, but we applied the same principles and went from a transactional type approach or just signing up for an event to a programmatic approach that really gets into the philanthropy of what we're doing. And I coined the phrase going from a moment to a movement for our organizations to really capture the philanthropic power of our brand and all the good stuff we're doing in the community. So Miami Dolphins Foundation, we went out into the community and asked supporters to join us in our efforts through traditional mail solicitations. We have access to our complete season ticket member database to encourage people to support. And then the Dolphins Challenge Cancer operates like any American Cancer Society or any cancer-related philanthropy. It's really not. It's tied to the team, of course, in name and everything that we do. But in terms of the operation, it operates more like a true nonprofit would, and with the sole beneficiary, etc. So that's pretty much our background. It's very interesting to see it work. It's not a major gift background. We're not cultivating hundreds and hundreds of prospects to give major gifts. It's more of a programmatic mass solicitation type operation, but it's been very inspiring, and it's amazing to see what can be accomplished with a professional sports brand backing your philanthropic efforts.
So Kristin, as you look at the Twin Cities market, quite a bit different, right, in terms of size from South Florida, from the Bay Area, from Chicago. Give us a little bit of sense to your involvement with the Twins and really the direction that the organization is looking to make an impact in the Twin Cities and the state of Minnesota.
Yeah, first, thanks for having us all, Roy. This is fun. It's interesting to hear from all of my colleagues across the country as well. So with the Minnesota Twins, we have kind of two buckets similar to Jesse. We actually have the Twins Community Fund, which is actually celebrating our 30th year right now. This is our 30th year. That was initially funded through some World Series win things that we won the World Series in 1991. And so that's how it was kind of initially created. And the community fund has largely always been focused on youth baseball and softball. That's kind of our bread and butter for community fund initiatives. And then on the Twins kind of corporate side, we also do a variety of kind of community engagement initiatives that's a little bit broader than that youth engagement. For me, I am in my second year with the Twins and came, like Sara, from the nonprofit sector. I'm sensing a bit of a theme with our group, but came from the nonprofit sector, had been an executive director of a nonprofit in the Southwest, and came back home to Minnesota and had this unique opportunity to join the Twins. And so my perspective was a little bit different than folks who had maybe been in professional sports for multiple decades. And when I started, we talked a lot about what I call kind of confetti giving, and we were trying to be all things to everybody, and we were giving a little bit everywhere and trying to help. But the events of the last year have really changed us and forced us to look really deep inside who we want to be as an organization. Between the pandemic hitting and then the unrest that happened here in Minneapolis, and we consider ourselves the epicenter for kind of this movement that's happened over the last year in terms of social equity and racial equity. And we really took a long, hard look at ourselves as an organization and said, who do we want to be? What's the change we want to make in the world? And so we shifted and kind of realigned our giving strategies and said, we're fully committing to education, K through 12 education, and all things kind of youth development, out of school time. How do we help kids when they come to us for baseball or softball? We know that they come with a whole host of other challenges. And how do we help connect them to those amazing organizations that are doing this really incredible work? So that's kind of where we're at right now. In terms of our space, we are unique in the upper Midwest. We're really the only baseball team in the far north. And so we call our region Twins territory. And that includes all of Minnesota, the Dakotas, Iowa, and part of Wisconsin. So for us, we have this giant geography that we're trying to engage and trying to think about what are the community issues that are faced right here in downtown Minneapolis, but also in rural Western North Dakota, and how can we engage with our fans and our communities there. And it's an interesting challenge because they're all very, very different. But it's fun. I'm excited to hear more about what the others have to say today. So thanks again.
Well, you may get a challenge from some of the Brewer fans about trying to claim Wisconsin as part of your territory.
We're very specific Western Wisconsin, but we'll take any of those Brewer fans we can.
So Justin, you've had an interesting experience in terms of your work before you got to the 49ers. So I'd love to have you take our audience through that, and then looking at some of the initiatives that you're working on in the Bay Area now.
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I feel honored to be with this group of nonprofit leaders and talking about things that we love. And thanks for everybody who's attending. We'll make sure to keep it light and fun. So Justin Prettyman, like Roy said, I spent my first about 11, 12 years with the Boston Red Sox in a similar capacity on their foundation side, the Red Sox Foundation, and just was able to leverage, the passion for the team, the ballpark, the region, and we raised over $100 million in the time that we were there and put that right back in the community, which was phenomenal. And then the opportunity to come out to the Bay Area arose in 2017, and I hopped on it, and it's been great ever since. So the 49ers Foundation, like Kristin and the Twins, we're also celebrating our 30th anniversary, and we're kind of using it. And in addition to our 30th anniversary, the team, the 49ers, are celebrating their thank you for that. I love the emojis. The team is also celebrating their 75th anniversary. So you have the pandemic, it was obviously really, really terrible, and there was a lot of tragedy, but coming out of the pandemic, it's just so great to have something positive to rally around. These anniversaries serve as something that hopefully will bring people together and celebrate our work in the community. The 49ers Foundation has really focused on youth broadly. And over the past couple of years, we've kind of tried to tighten that mission up a little bit. And I've heard similar things from other people where the sports world tends to be like this catch-all for all things. It's like, oh, there's a charitable request, give it to the foundation. And you're like, well, this is for saving the wild forest. And we focus on youth and education. So it's not an easy seat to sit in, because you have to say no to some really deserving causes, but we've really tried to get tight on our mission. And we have in Levi Stadium, when they built the stadium, they built 4 classrooms in the north end zone. So before the pandemic, we were taking in about 60,000 students and teachers annually, and teaching them STEAM, so science, technology, engineering, arts, and math, and using Levi Stadium, football, and the 49ers as that lever to intrigue kids into learning. So that was like our in-house program, teaching STEAM, and then our boots on the ground program outside in the community is our 49ers prep program. And that's really a youth empowerment program, teaching, the importance of a healthy mind, body, and really well-being. And that's about 40,000 students. So 60,000 students coming into the stadium annually, another 40,000 that we're hitting out in the community, for about 100,000 students annually that we work with. So I had a lot less gray hairs on my head when I started this job, but they're worth it. They're worth it.
So I think one of the things that's challenging that we hear a lot is you work for pro sports teams, right? There's a lot of money. People see the players' contracts are very public. And you look at the numbers, so let me start with Jesse. When you look at the dollars coming into the foundation, people think that there's a lot of contributions, maybe from the players, from the owner. So if you look in general sense, how much participation do you get from the players, and how much access do you get to them in terms of foundation activities?
To be honest, Roy, I'm really not concerned with what our players donate to us with. I'm focusing on our fan base, their charitable foundations, getting the word out in the community. I think by doing that, I think our players will want to hop on board, but it's not a slam dunk. They have their own foundations. They're making a lot of money, but they're necessarily not going to donate it to us. So they can help spread our word, and they do. But in terms of solicitations, it's not an area that it's not where I'm targeting. It's not low hanging fruit. It's not it's not where I'm prospecting. I think those who are affiliated with our brand from a passion standpoint, not so much an employee-employer relationship, is probably a better sell philanthropically, and that's where we're focusing on, though. But there's a lot of dollars that are thrown out, big salaries, ownership has big money. It's the hardest thing that we run into is why am I going to support a billionaire's team or their philanthropic efforts? And we counter that by our leadership, and our ownership always steps up first. So we'll say, hey, we're giving 100,000. We want the public to join us, or we're doing this. So we put our money where our mouth is to try to counter that stigma a little bit. And it's valid. I mean, these franchises are worth a lot of money. And usually the owners have a ton of money. So yeah, so I hope that answered it. It's just, it's not our area of focus right now.
So Sara, so not necessarily raising money from the players, but in terms of working with the players to help them define their philanthropic mindset and how they approach philanthropy. What involvement do the Blackhawks have in that area?
Yeah, I mean, I think very similar to what Jesse said. It's not, my main focus in terms of having them write checks. However, I feel coming in and understanding this landscape for the first time in the last year and a half. Now I have more appreciation for just how incredibly community centered our team is and our players on the team. And it starts from the coach and leadership all the way down. And especially our captain, Jonathan Taves, has an incredible foundation, very aligned with our focus. So we tend to work very closely together. But in terms of, it's not just about the money, it's about what they're able to bring in terms of the attention, the focus, the energy, similar to what Justin was sharing in terms of the programs we run for social and emotional learning and STEM. We really want our players to be involved and be authentically involved in those efforts in the community. And they step up every chance we get. Of course, there's the times where like, we need you to be here for this fundraising event, but more often than not, what they want to be doing is the actual engagement with kids and making genuine connections. And it's been incredible working with and across our hockey operations team. Whenever we have an ask on the community side, it's always embraced. And how can we make this work? What can we do to work this out with schedules and ensure that your needs are met in the community, and that it starts with where things are in the locker room, and the guys are so committed to working in the community. And we recognize the exciting thing for us is as that partnership and foundation's been strong for many years, we're now beginning to do some really interesting and creative work with individual players to understand our guys come in pretty young. They're skating at 18, 19, 20. So oftentimes they may not have, they certainly don't have a foundation yet, and they might not have a full and clear understanding of where they want to philanthropically or get involved in the community. So we're beginning to actually work with those players this year on developing and understanding what it is we do, where are their interests and passions, what are their connections to community that are related to their own family and their own work, or where they grew up or how they grew up, so that that work, when they're coming to speak to kids or they're engaging in one of our programs, it's really tangible to the kids, that it feels really connected. And that's a new effort that we're leading from, instead of who's available, to really understanding where the players are, their passions and interests lie, and really aligning that to the right community program or community initiative that we have. And that's just going to be kicking off really this summer and into next season. So we're excited to kind of grow and deepen that work across the entire locker room.
Roy, are you okay if I jump in real quick?
Sure, of course.
I think it's interesting because we haven't been able to really access our players in the same way that we normally would have pre-pandemic, right? There's been all of this restrictions about access. So like, with all of that aside, I think something that Sara said is interesting about kind of what the players' personal passions are. And that's something that we're really trying to lean into, that each of them are humans just like all of us. And they have that thing that they care about that maybe their family's always been engaged in, or something that happened in their life that led them to find that kind of community or charitable initiative that's really personal to them. The other kind of interesting challenge that we have is that a lot of our players don't live in our community in the off season. So during the season, they're traveling constantly. They're here, they're playing games, they're on the next road show. And then in the off season, they're back home. And a lot of them have their community initiative that they're really committed to in their hometown or in their home state. And so for us, it's thinking about how do we connect them here to Minnesota, but also fully respecting that they've got these things that they love to do back in their home community, and supporting them and encouraging that. And for us, it's, yeah, we'd love them to get involved here in our neck of the woods, but as long as they're giving back and doing good for the community and trying to make an impact, we want to support them as best we can.
And I think that support of the players and helping educate and train the players is a crucial element. So Justin, as you look at the work the 49ers do, you talked about the classroom, you bring an enormous number of people through there, and that's something that's a direct program that you offer. What's the split for the 49ers in terms of funding or supporting other organizations versus the programs that you run directly?
Yeah, that's a great question, and it's one that is somewhat relevant and topical for us in our work. When I came to the 49ers Foundation in 2017, they had historically been an organization who gave out a little bit of money to a lot of different organizations. And that kind of goes right back to that kind of mission stretch, right, that we were talking about before. And they have since, I should say, have since recalibrated our strategy there. So we're giving more impactful grants to a fewer organizations. So those include our own programs. Prior to my arrival in 2017, we didn't have any direct programs. The 49ers Foundation was just a grantor giving out grants to other organizations. Now we still do that at a reimagined way, but we also run our own programs. So those take a lot. If anybody has run programs are run by people. There's no real science behind that. You need good people to run programs, and there's salaries and there's some expenses on running those. So I would say that right now we have what we call our legacy beneficiaries. So it's a group of 5 organizations that we have supported for a number of years, who we have an operating agreement with, where they report, they send us back reports, and there's kind of things that we do for them and they do for us, as far as coming to the stadium and bringing kids and getting to tour the facility. But then also we'll have, when possible, we'll make in-kind donations and support their activities. So I would say that right now we're probably giving more to both our legacy beneficiaries as well as our own direct programs, 49ers EDU and 49ers Prep. So we're giving a little bit more there, but we still keep discretionary funds. So when we do get those requests from community members and whatnot, we're able to handle those as they come in.
So when you look at the programs that you do fund now, give us a sense of the scale. You talked about giving small grants to a lot of organizations. What number of organizations were you funding then at that point, at some level, compared to what you're doing now?
Yeah, I mean, it was they were funding a lot. It was like over 100 organizations, and we're talking about getting a check for and it's in our circle of trust here, not the most impactful grants, right? When, to kind of what Jesse was saying before, you would think that one of these professional sports teams, they're going to, when you open up that envelope, you're going to see something maybe with a comment in it. But it was like a couple hundred, like, here's $150 towards your dinner. And it's just, there was really no impact. It was kind of a box check, as a check, literally, versus now. So between our legacy beneficiaries and our direct programs, I would say the range is between like $100,000 to north of 1.5 million for some of the programs, which are pretty significant, but again, much smaller. I'm talking about like internal programs and our legacy beneficiaries, less than 10 organizations. So we can really go deep, really build relationships, really get to know the work, know the people and the programs. So it's just a different strategy.
Jesse, I know for the Dolphins during the pandemic, you created some really interesting initiatives around the food delivery. And I'd love you to share the story of how that vision came about and how that was executed.
Yeah, absolutely. So hitting on our approach, going from transactional giving to programmatic giving, the Dolphins have just such a strong track record in the community of answering the needs of the times, whether it's hurricanes or disaster relief. And very quickly after COVID, we realized that there's going to be a lot of hurt in the community, just people out of jobs, not being able to be fed, economic fallout, and our leadership and ownership said that we want to do something, but it better have staying power. It can't be just, we can't give away 500 meals or do one food distribution for the cameras. We want to do a sustainable program. So we came up with the Miami Dolphins Foundation Food Relief Program, and the initial program was just supposed to be, we're going to provide 1,000 meals a day for a year for a $2 million investment from the team. So they brought that to me and asked if we could get it done. And I said, I'm sure our community relations staff is the best in the business. They'll find a way to figure it out. But why are you just going to give us $2 million from our owner? Why don't we take $1 million of that and ask the community to match us? Even though he'll give $2 million anyways, but it's use $1 million for the match. So they went back to Mr. Ross, our owner, and he said, I'll give you $2 million up front, and I'll give you an additional $1 million if you can raise another $1 million. So just by us going back to him with the match idea, he committed to $3 million. So we went forward with this matching idea. So he committed $2 million leadership gift, and he'll give another $1 million if the public gives $1 million. So that gave me all I needed to go public and do a traditional type annual giving campaign to all Dolphins fans worldwide. So one thing I've learned about working in an NFL franchise is, as opposed to college, is you have so many omni-channel marketing resources available to you. You can market everywhere through the team's resources. So we took that approach, and we raised an additional $1.1 million from Miami Dolphins fans and partners by getting the word out there. Additionally, the Lennar Foundation stepped up in between all this and gave $1 million on top of that. So we ended up raising $5 million, 1,000 meals per day, drive-through distribution from our stadium. And then the events in Minneapolis played out with George Floyd, and social justice became a dominant topic. And we've always been involved in that area with our Football Unites program. And doing a little research, we determined that minority-owned restaurants in Miami Gardens, Florida, where our stadium is, were closing at just unbelievable clip. They're just not good. Families, restaurants, their families, their staffs, unemployed, life savings lost. So we decided to source close to $2 million of that money to feed